Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolutely epic, continuous relay race of human history. We're tracing an unbroken, chronological chain, literally from the very first breath of mankind all the way to the edge of the Promised Land. Our source material today takes these ancient, sweeping eras and brings them down to earth, focusing on the personal stories of the individuals who actually lived them. And as you'll see, the struggles of ancient humanity really aren't so different from our own. Before we zoom into those individual lives, just think about the grand scale of the narrative we're examining here. We are tracking humanity across massive, mind-boggling sweeps of time. We go from that sudden spark of day 6 right into a 120-year countdown, then plunging into 400 years of really dark oppression, and finally, a 40-year desert wander. It's an incredible roadmap of our earliest developmental epochs.
To make sense of it all, we're going to follow this structured map chronologically. We'll hit 6 distinct eras: creation and the fall, blood, water, and rebirth, a family is chosen, the descent into Egypt, Moses and the Exodus, and finally, the wilderness journey. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Creation and the Fall. So the story begins in a state of perfect innocence, but then humanity faces its first big test. The narrative tells us that a serpent tempts Eve with a simple piece of fruit, totally twisting the Creator's words with a single fatal lie. And that one choice, it disrupted everything. It introduced fear, shame, and mortality into the world. And you know what happened next. When confronted, Adam blamed Eve, Eve blamed the serpent, and just like that, the gates of paradise closed. Humanity began its long, hard march forward.
Moving right along to Section 2, Blood, Water, and Rebirth.
We almost immediately see the devastating ripple effects of that very first rebellion. And it passes right to the next generation. We've got Cain, who offered crops with the wrong heart, and Abel, who faithfully offered the best of his flock. When Abel's offering was accepted and Cain's was rejected, Cain committed history's first murder. He asked that infamous question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" That moment set an incredibly dark precedent for early human history, completely upending the family and forcing Cain into exile.
Now, as humanity kept multiplying, the text states that corruption hit an absolute peak. And that brings us to this staggering number, 120. The narrative tells us a man named Noah spent 120 years building an ark. And get this, he built it on entirely dry land. I mean, imagine the public mockery, the sheer endurance it took to do that for over a century. He built it out of gopher wood exactly as instructed, all to save just 8 lives, his own family, from a catastrophic global flood that essentially wiped the slate of humanity clean.
All right. Section 3. A family is chosen.
Following that massive geographical reset, the story zooms way in. We go from the whole world down to just one man. And what's really fascinating here is his extreme patience. At 75, Abram leaves literally everything behind to go to an unknown land. No map, just a promise. Fast forward to age 99, his name is changed to Abraham, meaning father of many nations. He waits a quarter of a century for a single promised heir. Finally, when he's 100 years old and his wife Sarah is 90, his son Isaac is miraculously born.
But then, the baton of history almost drops entirely. Abraham faces an absolutely terrifying test of faith. He's asked to sacrifice the very son he just spent 25 years waiting for. No way, right? But the text explains he actually passed this test because he trusted the Creator could even raise the dead. Right as he raised the knife, he was stopped, a ram was provided in the thicket, and Abraham famously named the site Jehovah-Jireh, the Lord will provide.
And boom, sibling rivalry strikes again in the very next generation. You have Esau, a hunter, who impulsively trades his entire, highly valuable birthright simply because he's hungry for a bowl of lentil stew. Talk about the ultimate cautionary tale for immediate gratification. Then you have Jacob, who cunningly steals their blind father's blessing. This massive deception forces Jacob into a 20-year exile, and the historical lineage takes a really complex, dramatic turn.
Coming back from that exile, Jacob has a profound, bizarre encounter where he physically wrestles with a divine being until dawn. This is a massive turning point because his name is changed from Jacob the deceiver to Israel, literally meaning one who struggles with God. This moment absolutely cements the identity of the 12 tribes that will eventually be born from his sons.
Section 4. The Descent into Egypt. From those 12 sons, the spotlight shifts to the favorite, Joseph. And his life is a total roller coaster of human betrayal and divine providence.
He's sold out by his jealous brothers, enslaved in Egypt, and falsely imprisoned. But because he can interpret Pharaoh's dreams about a coming famine, he goes from an inmate to prime minister practically overnight. Ultimately, all his suffering was used to save the whole region from starvation, bringing Jacob's family of 70 people into the Egyptian land of Goshen.
But that comfort didn't last. 400 years. That is a massive amount of time to pass in total silence. Over those centuries, that favored family of 70 multiplied exponentially, but they were turned into an enslaved, deeply oppressed populace under a new pharaoh who completely forgot about Joseph.
That brings us to Section 5, Moses and the Exodus.
Out of that intense darkness, a Levite baby is pulled from the Nile River. He's raised as Egyptian royalty, but later exiled into the desert for 40 years as a shepherd. And it's out there, as an 80-year-old man, that Moses encounters a supernatural anomaly, an ordinary desert shrub completely engulfed in flames, yet totally unconsumed. A voice from the fire tells him he's standing on holy ground and drafts him to go face the single most powerful ruler on earth to demand his people's freedom.
When Moses makes his demand, Pharaoh arrogantly responds, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him?" Well, the text outlines these 10 catastrophic plagues as a brutal, systematic dismantling of Egypt's power, its nature turned upside down. It all culminated in the chilling 10th plague. To be spared, the Israelites performed the Passover ritual. Painting lamb's blood on their doorways saved them from the angel of death, while Pharaoh's household suffered the ultimate loss.
The sheer scale of what happens next is wild. 2 million. That's the staggering estimated number of men, women, and children who finally marched out of Egypt. The narrative suddenly shifts from a single family of 70 to a colossal, moving city, marching right out into the unknown. But Pharaoh changes his mind and chases them down with 600 elite war chariots. The Israelites are completely trapped between this terrifying approaching army and a roaring sea. Panic sets in. And right at that impossible moment, Moses utters these iconic words. A fierce east wind famously cleaves the waters in two. They cross on dry ground, and the waters crash back down on the pursuing army, sealing their dramatic liberation.
Finally, Section 6, the Wilderness Journey.
Safely across, this massive population now has to actually figure out how to be a civilization. At the foot of Mount Sinai, they established divine law with the 10 Commandments, and the breakdown of this foundation is brilliant. 40% focuses purely on their vertical relationship with the divine. The other 60% is all about social justice, governing exactly how they must treat one another. It's a perfectly balanced society blueprint.
But tragedy strikes right at the finish line. They send 12 spies into Canaan, and 10 of them come back terrified, spreading rampant fear about giants in the land. Because they lacked faith, even after witnessing the greatest miracles in history, the narrative explains this newly liberated generation was sentenced to wander the desert for 40 years, 1 year for every single day they spied out the land.
As we wrap up this grand historical explainer, with Moses taking his final breath looking out from Mount Nebo, I really want to leave